My name is Emily. I am 47 years old. I live in a quiet suburb outside Chicago in a house I helped pay off long before anyone decided I was obsolete. For 15 years, I worked as the Director of Internal Controls and Regulatory Oversight for the same family-owned company that would later vote me out like a line item they no longer needed. And the day they replaced me with my own daughter, I signed the paper that ended their company. I am not telling this story because I was fired. I am telling it because I was erased. On paper, my exit was neat, respectful, strategic, a restructuring, a generational transition, words executives use when they want your silence more than your consent. Before that meeting, before my name vanished from systems I built with my own hands, you need to understand something. I was not decoration. I was not a support role. I was the person who made sure the company stayed alive when nobody was looking. I joined the company 17 years ago when it still ran on overworked managers and duct-taped processes. I married into the family a few years later. My husband already had a daughter. She was 10 when I met her. Quiet, observant, always watching. Her mother was gone. I stayed. I packed lunches. I drove to school conferences. I sat beside hospital beds. I helped with homework and college applications. When she cried, she came to me. When her father worked late, I was the one who stayed awake. I never called her my stepdaughter. I called her my child. At work, I did what nobody wanted. I built compliance frameworks. I handled federal audits. I signed regulatory certifications that kept contracts valid and factories running. I negotiated with inspectors who did not bluff. I stayed late. I stayed quiet. I fixed problems before they became disasters. People like me do not get applause. We get taken for granted. For years, that was enough. I believed loyalty mattered. I believed family understood the weight of what I carried. I was wrong. The first warning came as a calendar invite. Executive alignment meeting. Mandatory. No agenda. The second warning was my chair. It was gone. I stood at the doorway holding my notebook, watching people I trained avoid my eyes. Then I saw her. My daughter. She was sitting where I always sat. She looked older, sharper. Her hair pulled back tight. A tailored blazer I had never seen before. She did not look at me. Not once. The consultant spoke. Words filled the room. Modernization. Fresh leadership. Succession planning. Then the sentence dropped. Olivia, your role will be sunset as part of this realignment. Sunset. As if I were outdated software. No discussion. No warning. No gratitude. They turned the screen. A new organizational chart. My name faded. Hers bold. Director of Compliance and Oversight. My child. The room waited for my reaction. I smiled. Not because I agreed. Not because I accepted it. But because I had already seen something they had missed. At the bottom of the chart were responsibilities that could not be reassigned. Regulatory authority. Certification chains. Legal signatures. All still bound to one name. Mine. I congratulated her. I wished everyone luck. I walked out without raising my voice. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table. The house was silent. No footsteps. No voices. Just the hum of electricity and the sound of paper sliding from a printer. I printed one clause. The one I wrote myself years earlier. The one nobody ever bothered to read. That was the moment I stopped being a mother who had been betrayed and became a system they could not shut down. My name is Olivia Carter. I am 46 years old. I live in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio, in a house I helped pay off long before anyone thanked me for it. For 15 years, I worked as the Director of Internal Compliance and Regulatory Oversight for my husband's family company. And the day they replaced me with my own daughter, I signed the paper that ended their company. Let that sink in. I am not telling you this because I am proud. I am telling you this because people love to pretend betrayal is loud. It is not. Betrayal is polite. It wears pressed suits. It uses words like transition and alignment while it sharpens the knife behind its back. The meeting was scheduled for 8:30 on a Tuesday morning. No warning, no context. Just a calendar invite titled Strategic Restructuring Discussion. I already knew what that meant. When you are the woman in the room who built the system, they eventually start calling you the problem. I walked into the boardroom carrying the same leather binder I had carried for years. It held audit schedules, federal correspondence, licensing confirmations, and renewal timelines that kept the company alive. I sat at the far end of the table, the seat I had earned back when the business still operated out of a rented warehouse, and my husband still asked me what a balance sheet meant. Gregory T. Winslow sat at the head of the table, fingers steepled, face tight with that practiced executive calm. Matt sat 2 seats down, already avoiding my eyes. He had learned how to do that recently. Avoidance was easier than guilt. Then she walked in, my daughter, the girl I raised from the age of 10, the child who used to crawl into my bed during the thunderstorms, the one whose college applications I proofread at 2 in the morning while her father slept. She was wearing a navy blazer that still had the department store fold lines pressed into the sleeves. Her hair was pulled back too tight. Her hands shook when she placed her laptop on the table. She did not sit next to me. She sat in my chair. Gregory cleared his throat. "Olivia," he said, like he was about to compliment me. "We appreciate everything you have done for this company." That sentence is never followed by good news. He continued talking about evolution, about modern leadership, about how the company needed fresh perspective to remain competitive. I watched his mouth move while my ears rang, a dull pressure building behind my eyes. Then he said it. "Effective immediately, we have decided to transition the Director of Compliance role." He gestured toward my daughter. "We are appointing her to oversee regulatory operations going forward." The room stayed silent. No applause. No congratulations. Just the low hum of the HVAC system and the sound of my pulse pounding in my ears. My daughter did not look at me. I waited for her to say something. Anything. A word. A glance. An apology disguised as professionalism. Nothing came. I felt something shift inside my chest. Not heartbreak. Not anger. Clarity. They did not just replace me. They erased me. Gregory slid a folder across the table toward me. Inside was a severance agreement. 2 pages. Clean. Efficient. Bloodless. I flipped to the signature line. That was when I smiled. Not because I was calm, because I was finished pretending. You see, for 15 years, I was not just doing a job. I was holding the spine of the company together. Every federal license, every compliance authority, every regulatory signature that allowed their factories to operate, their shipments to move, their contracts to exist, all of it traced back to one name, mine. They never asked how that worked. They never cared to learn. They assumed compliance was paperwork. They assumed authority could be reassigned like a parking space. My daughter swallowed hard and finally looked at me. Her eyes were wide, confused, afraid. She still did not understand what they had just done. I signed the document with a steady hand. Gregory exhaled, relieved. Matt relaxed in his chair. Someone even smiled. I stood up, gathered my binder, and walked out of the room without a word. No shouting, no tears, no dramatic exit, because the loud part was coming later. That night, sitting alone at my kitchen table, I printed one clause from my original employment contract, the one I had written myself all those years ago, back when the company could not afford lawyers and trusted me to protect it. Section 7, subsection C. In the event of involuntary termination, all company-sponsored regulatory credentials, certifications, and licensing authorities held by the undersigned shall be rendered void within 48 hours of contract nullification. I placed the paper neatly on the table, and for the first time since that meeting, I allowed myself to breathe. They thought they had taken my job. What they actually did was pull the pin, and the explosion was already counting down. The first thing I noticed after the meeting was how quiet the house felt. Not peaceful, vacant. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, still wearing the same heels I had worn into the boardroom that morning. I did not turn on the lights. I did not take off my coat. I stood there in the dark entryway, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock I had bought the year the company landed its first federal contract. Time kept moving. Everything else had stopped. For 15 years, my days had followed the same rhythm. Wake early, coffee black, review overnight reports, check compliance alerts before most people brush their teeth. I had built my life around preventing disasters no one else even knew were possible. And now, apparently, I was obsolete. I set my binder down on the kitchen table and opened it out of habit. The tabs were color-coded. Manufacturing, logistics, environmental compliance, federal renewals. My handwriting filled the margins. Notes from audits. Phone numbers of inspectors who trusted me enough to call before filing violations. This was not a job. This was a nervous system. I thought of my daughter sitting in my chair, her hands shaking, her eyes refusing to meet mine. I had raised her to be capable, independent, confident. I had defended her when executives dismissed her as inexperienced. I had coached her through her first presentation, her first negotiation, her first mistake. And today she had replaced me without a word. That hurt more than I expected. Not because she took the role, but because she let them turn me into a footnote. My phone buzzed on the counter. A message from her. "Can we talk tonight?" I stared at the screen until it dimmed. No, tonight I needed silence. The next morning, I woke up at 5 out of muscle memory. I made coffee and opened my laptop before remembering I no longer had access. My credentials had been revoked overnight. No explanation, no transition window, just a polite error message informing me I was no longer authorized. They worked fast. I drove past the office anyway. From the parking lot, the building looked the same. Glass facade, clean lines, a company that liked to present itself as orderly, responsible. I watched employees badge in, unaware that the ground beneath them had already begun to crack. Inside, my daughter was discovering what I had protected her from. By noon, my phone started ringing. I let it go to voicemail. By evening, the messages grew more frantic. One from Matt. One from a compliance analyst whose name I had written recommendation letters for. One from legal, phrased carefully, like a question that was afraid of the answer. No message from Gregory. That did not surprise me. Men like him only reach out when they need something. On the third day, I finally listened to the voicemails. Olivia, we cannot locate the authority mapping for the Midwest facilities. Olivia, the vendor portal is flagging our certifications as pending. Olivia, the federal dashboard is showing irregularities. Irregularities. That was a gentle word for what was happening. I opened my personal laptop and logged into a private system I had built years ago. Not company-owned. Not accessible to anyone else. A mirror of the compliance architecture I had designed from scratch. Every license, every expiration date, every governing body, all tied to one certifying officer, me. They had assumed that removing me from the building removed me from the system. They were wrong. At dinner that night, my daughter finally came home. She stood in the doorway, unsure whether to step inside or retreat. She looked younger without the blazer, smaller, like the girl who used to ask me to check for monsters under her bed. "Mom," she said softly. I did not answer. She swallowed. I did not know it would happen like that. I turned to face her. Like what? She struggled for words. So fast, so final. I laughed. Once, short and sharp. You sat in my chair. Her eyes filled with tears. They said you agreed. That stopped me. What? They told me you wanted to step back, that you were tired, that you thought it was time. I closed my eyes. There it was. The oldest trick in the book. Divide, replace, rewrite. They lied, I said. Her shoulders sagged. I did not want to hurt you. You did, I replied calmly. But that is not the worst part. She waited. You let them believe you could carry what you do not yet understand. She flinched. They keep asking me things, she admitted. About the licenses, about the renewals. I told them I needed time. Time was the one thing they did not have. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the weight settling in. The realization that the role she had accepted was not ceremonial. It was lethal. I loved you enough to protect you from this, I said. You should have loved me enough to ask why. She started to cry then, quietly. Guilt spilling out now that it was too late to contain. I can fix it, she said. We can fix it together. I shook my head. No, I said. You cannot fix what you do not own. She stared at me, confused. What do you mean? I stood up and gathered my plate. I mean, this is no longer a family matter, I said. It is a legal one. That night I printed the audit logs. I cross-checked timestamps. I confirmed the activation sequence had begun. The system was doing exactly what I designed it to do. By Friday morning, the notice arrived. Federal audit. Mandatory. Non-negotiable. I folded the letter once and placed it on the table. My daughter was watching me now like she had when she was little, waiting for me to tell her what to do. This time I did not, because the lesson had already begun, and the next phase would not be gentle. By Monday morning, my name had stopped appearing in their emails. That was deliberate. Companies do not remove people. They erase them, slowly, politely, with phrases like updated workflow and revised access control. It is easier to pretend someone never existed than to admit you built everything on their back. I noticed the erasure immediately. My access to the vendor compliance portal was gone. The federal dashboard rejected my credentials. Even the internal audit tracker I had designed now greeted me with a sterile error message. Unauthorized. It would have been funny if it had not been so predictable. I spent that morning doing something I had not done in years. I went for a walk. No phone, no alerts, just the sound of my shoes against the sidewalk and the brittle snap of early autumn leaves underfoot. I was not angry anymore. Anger wastes energy. Clarity conserves it. At exactly 10:30, my phone rang. I did not answer. At 10:32, an email arrived from legal. Subject line neutral, tone cautious. The kind of message written by someone who already suspects the truth but is hoping to be wrong. Olivia, we are seeing discrepancies in our certification status. Could you confirm whether any changes were initiated prior to your departure? Prior to my departure, I closed the message without responding because nothing had happened prior. Everything was happening now. I opened my private system and watched the indicators roll forward like dominoes. License dependencies shifting, authority chains breaking, renewal flags turning yellow, then orange. Still no red. Not yet. They had time to notice. They did not have time to understand. At lunch, my daughter called. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was tight, controlled, professional. She was trying very hard to sound like someone who belonged in that role. They are asking questions I cannot answer, she said. They want documentation I cannot find. I said nothing. They are saying you must have saved things elsewhere, she continued. That you were known for being thorough. Thorough. That word used to be a compliment. I need you to explain how the authority mapping works, she said, just so I can get them through this week. There it was. Not an apology. A request. I cannot, I said. A pause. Then frustration leaked into her voice. Why not? Because I am no longer authorized, I replied. You made sure of that. Silence. They think I am failing, she said quietly. They are looking at me like I broke something. I closed my eyes. No. They were looking at her like they were beginning to understand what they had broken. Listen to me, I said. This role was never a promotion. It was that liability shield. What does that mean? She asked. It means I absorbed the risk so you did not have to, I said. Now the risk belongs to whoever sits in that chair. She exhaled shakily. Can you come in? Just for a meeting. I pictured the boardroom. My chair? Her hands gripping the table edge. No, I said. I already did my part. The line went dead. That afternoon, I received a message from Matt. Short, direct, uncharacteristically honest. We are in trouble. I did not reply, because by then, the first red alert had appeared. A vendor shipment flagged as non-compliant. A certification marked inactive pending reauthorization. A contract automatically paused due to regulatory uncertainty. Small things. But small things are how systems bleed. By Wednesday, the company stopped pretending everything was fine. Meetings multiplied. Voices rose. Consultants were brought in. The kind who charge obscene fees to tell executives what they should have learned years ago. I watched it unfold from a distance. Not with satisfaction. With inevitability. That night, my daughter showed up at my door. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red. Her blazer was wrinkled now, like she had slept in it. I did not know, she said the moment I opened the door. I know, I replied. They told me you were blocking progress, she said. That you refused to modernize. I stepped aside and let her in. She sat at the kitchen table where I had signed the document that started this. The same table where she had done homework as a child. The same surface where she once spilled nail polish and cried, convinced she had ruined everything. I had cleaned it up then. I did not clean this up now. They are talking about bringing in external authority, she said. They think they can transfer the licenses. I almost smiled. You cannot transfer what is legally bound to a single certifying officer, I said. Especially not retroactively. Her face went pale. They said, worst case, it takes a few weeks. It takes longer than that, I said, and the clock is not on your side. She leaned forward, hands trembling. Tell me what to do. I looked at her and saw the child she used to be, layered beneath ambition she did not yet know how to carry. There is nothing you can do, I said gently. You accepted a role without asking why it existed. She started to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just the quiet collapse of someone realizing they had mistaken a title for control. The next morning, the notice arrived. Federal audit. Unscheduled. Mandatory. My phone lit up within minutes. Calls. Emails. Messages marked urgent. I did not respond, because by then, the system was no longer reacting. It was executing. And no one inside that building had the authority to stop it. The auditors arrived on a Thursday morning. No sirens, no warnings, just 3 people in neutral suits carrying clipboards and the kind of calm that comes from knowing the law is already on their side. They checked in at reception at 9:07. By 9:10, the executive floor was locked down. I did not hear about it from the company. I heard about it from a former analyst who still had my number saved under Do Not Delete. Her message came through with a single sentence. They are asking for the certifying officer. I knew what that meant. The building could not legally function without one. Inspections could not proceed. Shipments could not move. Contracts automatically paused the moment federal oversight was triggered without an authorised signature on record. The company had always relied on that buffer. They just never acknowledged who held it. By 9:30, my phone was vibrating non-stop. I watched it from across the room like an object that no longer belonged to me. At 9:42, the call came from Gregory. I answered. "Olivia," he said, skipping pleasantries. "We need to resolve this immediately." "Resolve what?" I asked. "The audit," he snapped. "They are demanding documentation we cannot access." I said nothing. "Why were we not informed that your authority could not be transferred?" he demanded. "You were informed," I replied. "You chose not to read." His breath hitched. I could hear papers shuffling, panic being masked as control. "We are prepared to reinstate you," he said quickly. "As a consultant. Temporarily. With compensation." There it was. Not remorse. Necessity. "I am no longer available," I said. "You cannot just walk away," he said. "This is bigger than personal feelings." "You made it bigger," I replied. "You made it legal." He lowered his voice. "Think about your daughter." I did. That was why I said no. "I already did," I said. "She made her choice." I ended the call. Inside the building, my daughter was being escorted into a conference room. I did not see it, but I know how it looked. I had sat in those rooms before. The glass walls, the polite smiles, the questions framed as collaboration. She had answers, just not the right ones. They asked her to locate the authority registry. She searched. They asked her to reassign credentials. She tried. They asked her to sign off on a compliance extension. She froze, because the system did not recognize her. By noon, the auditors had escalated. Facilities were flagged. Operations paused. Vendors notified. Contracts worth millions began timing out. Someone finally said my name out loud. That was when the shame started. By 1:15, my daughter was called back into the room. This time legal was present. They asked her when she assumed the role. They asked her what training she received. They asked her who assured her the authority could be transferred. She answered honestly. She said she was told it was routine. That word again. Routine is what people say when they do not understand risk. At 2:00, the auditors requested confirmation of the termination clause tied to my employment. Legal pulled the file. They found Section 7. Subsection C. They went quiet. At 2:30, Gregory requested an emergency call with me. I declined. At 3, my daughter called. I answered. Her voice was shaking now. "They are saying I may be personally liable." "Yes," I said. "You are." "For what?" she whispered. "For accepting authority you were not qualified to hold," I replied. "And for acting on it." She started to cry. "I trusted them," she said. "So did I replied. There was a knock at my door. When I opened it, she was standing there. No blazer, no laptop, just a woman who suddenly understood that titles do not protect you when the law arrives. "They are asking if you will come in," she said, "just to answer questions." I shook my head. "I already answered them," I said. "Years ago, in writing." She fell to the chair at my kitchen table, the same chair she had once used to colour pictures while I reviewed compliance logs beside her. "I did not mean to replace you," she said. "You did," I replied. "Intent does not change impact." She looked up at me, eyes red. "Is there anything I can do?" I thought for a moment. "Yes," I said. "You can tell the truth." At 4:45, the building was evacuated. At 5, the auditors issued a preliminary finding of non-compliance. At 5:30, the board voted to suspend operations pending review. By Monday morning, the company website was offline. By Tuesday, the headlines were circulating quietly. No scandal, just phrases like regulatory failure and leadership oversight, the kind that end careers without drama. My daughter was formally interviewed later that week. She told the truth. It did not save the company. It did not save her position. It did save her from criminal charges. Gregory resigned before the final report was published. Matt disappeared. I received one last email from the board. Short, formal, apologetic in tone, if not in substance. We acknowledge your critical role in the company's former operations. Former. I closed my laptop and stepped outside. The air was cool, clean, honest. For the first time in years, I was not responsible for keeping a broken system alive. I had not destroyed the company. I had simply stopped holding it together. And there is a difference. 3 weeks later, the company officially ceased operations. There was no farewell email, no town hall, just a quiet update on a government registry and a locked building that no longer served a purpose. People cleaned out desks in silence. Contractors stopped calling. Vendors moved on. So did I. I accepted a position at a firm that understood something my former company never did. Compliance is not an accessory. It is the spine. They did not ask me to simplify it. They asked me to protect it. I work fewer hours now. I sleep through the night. I drink my coffee slowly, instead of standing over a laptop like a sentry guarding a collapsing wall. And my daughter. She did not lose everything, but she lost enough. Her title was gone within days. Her reputation followed, not because she was malicious, but because she stepped into authority she had not earned and trusted people who benefited from her ignorance. She moved out of the house she once called home and into a small apartment closer to the city. She found work, lower level, less glamorous, real. We speak occasionally, not about the company, not about the audit, about weather, books, things that do not hurt. She apologized once. I accepted it. Forgiveness does not require reversal. People often ask me if I regret what happened, if I would do anything differently. The answer is simple. No, I did not seek revenge. I did not plot destruction. I did not raise my voice or demand recognition. I honored the system I built. I stepped away when I was pushed out, and I let the truth do what it always does when no one interferes. It surfaced. There is a lie people tell themselves about family. That blood excuses betrayal. That loyalty should survive even when respect does not. I believed that once. I do not anymore. Family is not who sits closest to you in a room. It is who refuses to take your chair while you are still standing. I did not destroy a company. I removed my hands, and when I did, everyone finally saw what had been holding it up. If there is a lesson in this story, it is not about power. It is about responsibility. Titles can be reassigned. Offices can be emptied. People can be replaced. Authority cannot. And when you mistake silence for weakness, do not be surprised when the quiet woman you erased turns out to be the foundation you never bothered to understand.